Okay, delighted to say I'm joined by Colm Gannon of the Mayo Advertiser and Fintan O'Toole of the 42.ie to talk about the club football at the weekend. No better place to start than in your own county there, Colm. So, huge shock seeing Castlebar Mitchels' second defeat in a row, and are out of the championship after losing to Westport.
Yeah, massive turn up the books of Mayo. I suppose the thing we look at the start, they were in the group of death. They were in with Brafey and they were in with Westport and Charlestown, so it was the toughest group you could possibly get going. But two defeats in a row, like there were two games they didn't perform in. They'll be very disappointed in Castlebar after they had a new management team in this year with Alan Flynn taking over. He managed Galway under 21 All-Ireland title. Mickey Conroy, former Mayo player and selected from the under 20s, is in them as well. But they just they got over Charlestown the first day on a bad day, but they just haven't been firing at all, and they got caught out by a very, very hungry and young and exciting Westport team on Saturday, and they had no answer for them. Obviously, there was a big caveat for that game was Neil Douglas wasn't able to start the game. Anyone's watched Castlebar over the last few years winning Connacht titles and came to All-Ireland finals. Neil's been one of the best forwards and club forwards in Mayo and been one of their top men. He got an injury at the right to start their first round game against Charlestown, and he played against Brafey. He came on at half time the last time. He just wasn't able to move and get into the game at all. It was a big loss. And Donal Vaughan also got injured in that Charlestown game and hasn't featured them since as well. Like they were two big players for them to lose, and they just weren't able to compete. And coming up against Brafey, where Brafey were in a do or die battle in round two, they had to win that game. Brafey won it, got over the line that they needed to, and Castlebar then got into Westport. Now Westport are a team that they've won a lot of underage, under 21 minors. They have a backbone of team for the young team that Rice College got to a Hogan Cup final a couple of years ago. They won an Ireland Intermediate title as well. So they're a common team who've done a lot of work. And you have a team there like Lee Keegan in it. Mark Moore was excellent for the last day. They also Kevin Kane is back, played as well. Colm Moore and Pat Lambert. They have a lot of good young players, and they're going to be a team. They're going to be a really force to beat with. But for Castlebar, it's going to be a very, very disappointing year in the championship. Like they won 4 in a row they won. They haven't been in the final in the last 3 years, but this year now, like it's been a very, very, very disappointing year for them.
Yeah, Fintan, like for such a huge team to be out this early, you were even suggesting there maybe they're the biggest team in the country gone at this stage.
Yeah, I think so. They would strike me as the biggest casualty early on because it's group stage format in Mayo and that they've had kind of three chances to kind of get it right and get out of the group. I mean, I know Kerry's straight knockout and there's some big teams gone there already over the weekend. The likes of Dingle and Austin Sachs that have contested county finals of late. But I mean, Castlebar, just on the outside, between them and Ballintober, really have dominated the decade in Mayo football. And an extension, they've been probably one of the closest sides to Corofin. They've been in a couple of All-Ireland finals. I mean, I wonder, is there something in that being on the road a long time? I mean, Colm's touching on there the fact that Westport are very kind of a young, hungry side and all their kind of underage success for the last couple of years, and then you throw in the experience of like Lee Keegan and Kevin Keane into it, kind of adds to a very potent mix. I mean, it seems like they were decisively beaten at the weekend. I mean, I watched the game that they played against Brafey. That was on TG Carr a couple of weeks ago, and I wonder, is that the one that's really going to kind of stick in the craw a bit, because they were in the ascendancy in that one. And we're kind of just overturned in the last quarter, and then suddenly you're under big pressure then heading into the last round of games. So definitely seems a big team to be kind of gone early in the group stages, after the group stages in Mayo, when you're looking towards the quarterfinals.
Colm, like you mentioned some injuries, Neil Douglas, Donny Vaughan, and even Fionn McDonough I don't think could fully start. But
no.
And then you mentioned to me the case of Barry Moran, who was obviously a massive player in the past and certainly for Mayo also, that he was sort of promoted out of nowhere onto the squad. So maybe they're just having a little bit of sort of personnel issues at the moment.
Yeah, that's it. Like Barry didn't even bring him on, and there was another guy then, Neil Lydon, started full forward. Neil had been playing the intermediates this year, playing very well. He'd been a mainstay of that Castlebar team that got to those Ireland finals. But he was promoted up and got started full forward. Neil's about 35, 36. But just it kind of shows they were obviously they were lacking a bit of leadership up front. They were looking for someone with experience to bring in, and that's the way they had to go to. They have a lot of good young players coming through, but I don't know, did they not just trust them at that stage, and where it was a do or die game, they needed the experience to be brought in, and it just didn't work out from that game against Westport. Like they were thereabouts in the first half. They were 2 points down. They were winning a lot of ball midfield, but they were getting swallowed up, and Westport played at such a fast pace break, and they just weren't able to keep with them. And then Westport just got a great run in the third quarter, much like they did against Brafey the first day. And this time they were able to back it up in the final quarter and not let Caspar into like they did the first day where Brafey nearly caught them. But like for Caspar, it's going to be very disappointing. There's the Michael Welsh League, the teams kind of played them before, but Caspar played their second game and played a lot of challenge games around Connacht, and actually their first team into it. I don't know if that come back to against them when it came to playing against teams in Mayo.
And like they're against the Nail in the quarter final, or the Nail. And this is a team that it's their first year up senior, and they scraped through in fairly amazing circumstances.
They did indeed, yeah. They won their first junior title ever 8 years ago. They won intermediate last year, and then this year they first came out to bet Garrymore, which have been South Mayo rivals. They drew with Ballinmullet then in the second round, and then yesterday they got beaten by Ballinmullet. But by Balladreen. Ballinmullet were their team and with the chance. They were playing Garrymore. Ballinmullet needed an 11-point swing to go in their direction, scoring difference, and it ended up being a 10-point swing is all they got at the end. Ballinmullet conceded a goal just going into injury time. I was at their game against Garrymore, but it was a lot of frank checking of Twitter of seeing how it's going, because at one stage it looked like Ballinmullet were through because Balladreen were up by about 13 or 14 points, but the Neil got a goal. They got a couple of points back at the end. But they're a good, exciting side. They're like the likes of Tommy Conroy, guys, people who've seen playing with Mayo in the league and stuff in underage. And Shoney Cosgrove's guys there around a long time. And it's just a great sort of fairy tale story for a team like that to come straight up and into make it to the quarter final. Now they don't have the most. They're facing Westport. So we know it's here in the quarter final. It's not going to be an easy game for them. Yeah, they have Westport on Saturday evening, but they're going to be actually live on television, so it's going to be a great thing for the Neils as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Two of those games are on. I'll just run through a couple of the other results, Fintan, and you can maybe react to one or two of them. Ballina Stephenites, they beat Knockmore 110 to 12 points. Davids lost to Ballintubber comfortably 5 points to 116. Brafey beat Charlestown by a point. As Colm has said, Balladreen beat the Nail, and Ballinmullet they beat Garrymore by a goal. But maybe even Brafey, having seen them a couple of weeks ago as well, do you see them finally throwing off the shackles and getting that first county title win?
I don't know. I mean, I wonder, will the extra factor maybe help them this year? Something we've discussed a couple of times. A team which has about 4 or 5 in with the Mayo senior. Couldn't be able to tell me definitely there, but there's definitely a lot of guys with kind of experience of the last while. Having them consecutively for a run of games during the summer, is that going to be the kind of maybe extra ingredient that kind of gets them over the line? Because usually they're coming back similar to the Dublin guys, long seasons with Mayo, and they kind of come back into the folds in the autumn. You still have Ballintubber there. Look, on paper they probably look very, very strong. Balladreen, Ballina maybe come back a bit the last couple of years, but definitely I suppose, just judging what Colm was saying, getting out of that group I think is the first real big achievement. It looks so competitive, and when you have a side like Castlebar gone, I'd say Brafey will just be delighted to kind of still be there. I know they only won by a point on Saturday, but I think it was a late goal by Charleston to bring it back to a point, so maybe survived a late scare. But 20 points is good scoring, and I think definitely having that county senior crew maybe all together at this time of the year maybe might get them to gel that little bit, which could be the extra ingredient that takes them over the line.
Did you see something in that Colm, the fact that they're playing together a bit more than they normally would?
I think so, yeah. Like it is, as Fintan said, you're missing guys, 4 or 5 guys from your team. You're playing league games, and guys are going to drop in and out then for championship. It is very hard, and this is the first year that I've had a good run with everyone there together. So they'll be hoping that they can get over the line. They come second in the group was going to be tough, but they probably got on paper the best draw they get, even though they're playing Balladreen the quarterfinal or last year's finals, but it was either them or it was either Ballintubber or Ballina or Balladreen. So I think Balladreen's probably the best draw they would have got. It's going to be a good game on Saturday. Balla are one of those teams that are very sort of quietly efficient, even last year, getting through the group, doing well, no one really knows, and then just to make the final. Angie Moore still pulling strings up top of them. You have David Drake there, Keane Hanley, Sharosa Cram, Seamus Cliff, the back. They're a very good side. I suppose the team, as Fintan mentioned, might come back as Ballina. Ballina and Knockmore played on Saturday. Knockmore were leading for most of the game. They actually had 2-player advantage for 6 minutes in the second half. He managed to score a point, and Ballina came back and pipped them at the end. And both teams were through, but that loss now ended up Knockmore to play Ballintubber in the quarter final, which if they'd won they'd have topped the group. So that just shows how, even though it was a dead rubber game, but at the end of the day, it cost Knockmore, who were a very good side as well in their own right. So they won the league here in Mayo last year, like of Kevin McLaughlin, Adrian Orme, Peter Naughton, good players, but they are now facing to probably the toughest team like in the Championship Mayo. Like I couldn't back against Ballintubber. They just know how to win. They'll grind you down. They'll grind you down. They're very, very, very hard to play against. And the attackers like Killian O'Connor, Jeremy O'Connor, Kieran Gavin, they're so good. Like even Killian didn't play the last week. Ballintubber still had 10 different scorers in their win. Like there's going to be the very, very hard team to back against.
You mentioned Cian Hanley there. How has he been doing? Like he obviously had injuries after coming back from the
injury. Yeah, I don't know if he played last game. He missed the first. He played one game. He missed another game. Like he's kind of been in and out. Like so, he's not. I don't think he's 100% fully fit. Like, and he hasn't really hit the ground as we hoped. I suppose since he came back from Australia. Like he was very good for Ballydreen last year, but this year he hasn't really been back in vogue. Back in full fitness. So we'll see on Saturday if he can. Like if he makes, he'll be a key player for Balla.
Yeah, and you're very much putting Ballintubber as the favourites, are you, Colm?
Yeah, they've won 2 in a row. They know how to win. Kevin Johnson is a very, very shrewd manager, and they just they're very, very. They know how to play. They play to their own game plan, and in Mayo in the last years, when it comes to crunch, Killian and Jeremy, these guys have taken the chances to win the games. And you can't. It's very. Winning's the mentality that's very hard to shake for any team to get over, and they just seem to know how to do it.
Fintan, how much of an impact do you think the water breaks have had in these games? Even watching Legion against Kerins O'Rahilly over the weekend, it was pretty obvious after the first one, having been 5 points to 2 down, that the game turned very quickly and Legion started to come into the game. So whether we're talking about Mayo or Kerry here, how much of an impact do you think it's having?
Well, I definitely think it has had an impact in a couple of games that I've seen, that it's kind of hard to put your finger on how the momentum has kind of switched back so much. I'm sure there's a book of evidence if you went through all the games. I'm sure there's been countless examples of teams that have managed the water break successfully, but some of the kind of switches in the initiative have been really, really striking. Like the one that jumped out for me the weekend was from Kerry, the Dingle and Templenoe game, which is a big, big shock result. I suppose in terms of the odds beforehand, Dingle were big favourites, but like Dingle had conceded a few goals, but they got on top in the third quarter, were reeling Templenoe in, were only a point behind, and then that was the moment the water break came. It was 3-6 to 11 or to 1-11. And it was only 1 point each scored for the remainder of the game. So, I'd love to know, what did Templenoe do in that 90 seconds? What did it do psychologically for them? Did they do a tactical? I like, from what I could see on TV, like there was nothing major tactically in terms of positioning, but was there something that they just managed to settle? And did Dingle lose that bit of momentum? Players, managers probably be better able to answer it, whether there's been any kind of major master strokes. But it certainly was pretty striking that Dingle were definitely pinning them in. We're definitely starting to chip away at that lead, and then it came against them. And then, like as you said, the RT televised game yesterday from Killarney was another example. That game completely switched in the second quarter in favour of Legion, and they scored the only goal of the game, and it was a really, really tight match, and that was the crucial score in the end. So definitely a couple of examples in Kerry that have suggested it. But look, this is the rule. You just have to adapt to it at this stage. You can kind of pine for the way things used to be, but you could probably say that for a lot of things in the G at the moment. Does the absence of fans affect certain teams? For example, in Kerry, they do a lot of this home and away system. So you've home venues. I wonder would Dingle, they had a load of home support to that game, would that have made a difference on Saturday night, for example?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I do find from playing matches that teams are using as much for a tactical chat as anything else. And if you look at the Champions League final, even it was a pretty good first half. The two managers get a chance to sit them down, and it ends up being one of the most horrendous second halves of soccer I've ever watched. But like you even mentioned, that game with Dingle and Templenoe, it's probably a case of the manager is bringing them all in and reorganising them. It's actually kind of killing the game a small bit, I find. Now, obviously, we need them for now, but I would really hope this isn't here to stay. Colm, have you seen much evidence of water breaks changing games?
Yesterday I was at an intermediate game here in Mayo. Kelchmar were playing Bunnyconnon, and Kelchmar used to win. They started off the game at 1-7 in the first 15 minutes of the water break, and then they got a point between then and half time. It completely, they were so on top, they were dominating the game, kicking points for fun. Then the water break came, they were out ready to go. Bunnyconnon managed to have on for his team for about 30 seconds longer than the rest. So, it just completely breaks the flow of the momentum. Sales is kind of the same, the Knockmore and Ballina game. At the second water break, Knockmore were winning by 11 points to 1-5. Ballina then made a couple of changes, sort things out a little bit, and then they scored. They hit 6 points, hit 5 points to 1 in the final 15 minutes as well. I do think, as Vincent, managements are kind of using them as a bit of a tactical thing when they can. It is a great thing to stop the momentum going against you, and I think smart managers will do that and hold on to their players for an extra 20-30 seconds, because no one's going to start the game without the other team back. Can you do that, or are you supposed to? Or what happens if the ref blows the whistle? Can you kick the ball and go?
Well, if it's your own kick out or something like that, then
Yeah.
obviously the other team can't kick it out for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they're not backing kick and going down, get a goal.
Yeah. One final question then on the Mayo Championship before we move on. Can you tell us a bit about Westport for the average person around the country who mightn't have seen them play? Obviously Lee Keegan is there. Kevin Kane played with Mayo back in the day and obviously would have played in the full backline that All Ireland final in 2012. He's restyled as a full forward these days, is he?
Yeah, he's in there as a ball winning full forward and laying it off. He's like a good little turn of pace over a couple of yards, which he's using very well. And he's kind of, I suppose, that knowledge in your county experience as well, just smartness laying the ball off. But they have Paddy O'Malley, the goalkeeper. He's actually in the gym to Roscommon last year. His family from there as well. Lee's playing either at halfback or as a essential man marker needs to be. But there's a lot of other good players like there. You've like Pat Lambert, Colm Moore, and our good attack force Mark Moore. And I think you might have seen the clip. Mayo GAT probably sold an unbelievable dummy sold kick a point the last day against Castlebar. He scored 3 or 4 points. He's a very, very good attacking forward. Kilkenny then plays a full forward, solid free taker is what able to. Then he was like Fionn McDonough. Fionn didn't start against Brafey, didn't start against Castlebar, but came on and had a massive in both games. I think he's just getting his way back to full fitness, and they're a real athletic young team who can run. They're hard hitting, and they have that kind of like Lee's the experience there. They really looked at his leadership and guidance, and they have a good sideline. Like Martin Calvy's there as manager, and then they've Martin Connolly, who's been involved with Westport for years through the schools team, but have brought a lot of these guys through the Rice College. You know them in and out, and they have a real real good setup there. They did a lot of work over the last decade at underage football, and really brought the club up. They have even 3 adult teams playing this year, or they had last year. I think just 2 this year. They had 3 adult teams playing last year. It just shows they really got football going in the town, which would have been very much a soccer town as well for a long time. So, but they're a team that's going to be very, very hard to beat. They're playing the Neil the next day. You expect them to do that, and then they're playing the winners of Balladreen and Brafey in the semi-final if they get through that. So they actually have a nice enough route to the final if they can get there this year.
Fintan, just to move on to the Kerry Championship, you mentioned Dingle losing to Templenoe. It finished 112 to 3-7. But the fact, how big of a shock is that really? It's Templenoe's senior championship debut. They were 7-1 outsiders. Dingle were 7-1 on.
I guess it's a shock in terms of the senior team who've pretty established and got to the Gunny final a couple of years ago, losing to the intermediate champions. But on paper, and I suppose the fact as well the Dingle had home advantage, but on paper, this looked a bit more 50-50. I would have thought, like the quality of Kerry players, there's about, I think, equal numbers on both sides that have either current senior experience or previous. You've 4 Templenoe guys starting who were involved last year with Peter Kane, and you've the 2 Dingle guys, Paul Ganey and Thomas Sullivan. And then Dingle obviously have been the coming side for the last couple of years in Kerry. Colm's talking about Westport, I suppose, in terms of school success, the Dingle school, Crocky Gwina, who won a couple of Hogan Cups, you've a lot of those guys coming along, So it's a surprise in that sense that Dingle have been kind of maybe the more established side, but Templenoe have a lot of experience in terms of winning an All-Ireland Junior, getting to an All-Ireland Intermediate semi-final, and obviously the class of those senior players. And they just had a good game plan, and they just looked very, very kind of cliched. They got the goals at the right times, and it was just watching the stream that was on the Irish Examiner website. It looked a terrible night for football, and if one team gets 3 goals in the first 35 minutes, that's a serious cushion that you can rely on if you don't concede another goal yourself, which they managed to achieve in defence. And Dingle couldn't get level. Paul Ganey was kind of well held by Ty Morley. He was held scoreless. That's probably very unusual for them. They lost Mikey Ganey to injury after 20 minutes, so a couple of little things didn't go their way. And even still at that, only lost by a point. Thomas Sullivan, who played really, really well, was really influential. He scored a point in the first half when it looked easy. I don't know how he managed to kind of put it over the bar from that angle. He was kind of coming through. It looked like definitely it was going to be a goal. So definitely some regrets. And the fact that it's knockout this year in Kerry means that's it. It's gone. In the same way for Kearns Rallies, Austin Sachs, there were some big club sides kind of gone by the wayside already after the weekend.
And was Ty Morley holding Paul Ganey scoreless? Was that down to Ty Morley's play, or was it just they couldn't get the ball into him, or did he have an off night?
No, I think in fairness, Morley was kind of stuck very well to him, but Templenoe retreated a lot when they didn't have the ball, so there was kind of a lot of bodies, and obviously they were kind of aware of Paul's threat. I think the flip side then was that his 2 cousins were alongside him, Connor and Dylan. They got 7 points between them. So you could argue that they held Paul, that the kind of pressure and the kind of the space opened up for maybe guys around him then to kind of get the scores. But I mean, they still scored 112, which wasn't bad considering the conditions. But I think it's just the 3 goals. They were just carved open for 2 of them in terms of counter-attacks, and then another was a long ball went in that kind of just fell kindly. And Killian Spillane was really good. He got 1-5 for Templenoe, stuck it away. But yeah, I think a big disappointment for Dingle with the amount of players they have coming through. Conor Ganey was very, very good for them, but just one of those games where they couldn't get level. And like massive win for Templenoe. I mean, like they celebrated the flying whistle. I mean, this is like, I'm sure you've both heard Pat Spillane talking about this. Like this isn't a golden generation. I think he said this could be the last generation. I mean, there's very, very small numbers there. They knew this group was coming. Their first ever time playing senior championship on their own, and they managed to beat a team like Dingle. And now they play Dr. Crokes in the quarterfinal next weekend. Like, so it's kind of dream stuff for them, even though obviously maybe it takes away from it a bit that their fans weren't there to share it.
Yeah, absolutely. Colm, I'm not sure how much you would have seen of Legion against Kerins O'Reilly over the weekend, but much like talking about Paul Ganey and not getting him on the ball enough or not getting enough scores out of him, like Kerins O'Reilly will come away wondering, why didn't we get the ball into Tommy Walsh a little bit more? David Moran was quiet for spells. Jack Savage, I wondered, did he do enough to get another go with kind of Kerry? James Donoghue, he was decisive, marked tightly, but very, very important. But coming back to that point again, yeah, if you don't get the ball in enough into a marquee man like Tommy Walsh or Paul Ganey, there's a chance you're getting knocked out.
Yeah, that's it. Like, when you have these guys in your arsenal, like, that you're going to try and use them as best you can. I suppose that's it. You get the ball into them, but if you're not getting the ball in, you're not going to get the damage. And I suppose that club football is, everyone's trying to the guys that are going to get special attention as much as they can. But like it is up to the rest of the team to get into them and try and get them to create the damage inside.
And Fintan, just to ask you about Jack Savage, I remember his name being in and around the match programs a lot and seeing little snippets of him here and there. After that performance he gave the other night, is there some place for him to fit into the Kerry setup, or do they just have too many forwards that it might be difficult for him?
Well, I think the big thing for the weekend, there's various guys were putting their hands up in terms of attackers in Kerry, but where do you fit them in? Like, I mean, the two kind of stars that I would have seen in terms of that aren't kind of fully involved at the moment, maybe on the starting side, were Tony Brosnan on Friday night, scored 210 for Dr. Crokes, and Jack Savage hit 6 points yesterday, and like really great displays of kind of leadership, and not just like getting scores in games where your team are winning easily. I mean, Kerins O'Reilly's lost, but it was very tight all through. Crokes' game was very tight, so it was like guys stepping up and showing the leadership and kind of really, like, when their team really needed them, they were there for them. But where do you fit them into that forward line? I mean, I don't think that's the area that's a fault for Kerry at the moment. I mean, Clifford is obviously a lock in the full forward line. Paul Ganey probably still is. So then you James O'Donoghue and Killian Spillane for that forward line. There's Tony Brosnan. Is he going to get one of them out of the equation for that corner forward? I mean, it's a nice complaint for Peter Keane. Brosnan is probably the one you think probably has to get a look, in the sense that the Crokes have been kind of dominating the last couple, or consistently challenging the last couple of years, and he's going to become their main forward. And I know he was involved in the league a bit this year. I think Colm, the last game against Mayo before the lockdown, he played in that and kind of played quite well. Like, but it's just the issue where to fit him in, and I think Kerry's thing is like it's kind of guys further back the field. What sort of guys maybe put their hands up? And on that, I thought Cormac Coffey, just watching the bit of Norty yesterday, he had a brilliant duel. I thought with James O'Donoghue. O'Donoghue came into it in the last 10 minutes and kicked some really good points, 2 really big scores when they needed them, punched one over and kicked another. But like, yeah, Coffey was pretty much kind of in his face, very aggressive all through. I think he's been on the fringes of it, But it's maybe a nice complaint for Peter Keane, but I'd say a lot of people in the country managers would love to have that headache with the amount of forward talent they have available.
Without doubt, and I think Colm Coffey probably got away with one too. His kind of arm went flying.
Absolutely. I think so. And even there was another one that I thought was kind of very blatant. Another Kerins O'Reilly's player at the end kind of swung across a guy who had the ball and like was nowhere near the ball, got him straight in the face. Look, maybe the ref didn't see the one, but the one about the Coffey and O'Donoghue one, showing yellow cards all around, seeing maybe an easy solution, an easy way out.
Colm, do you look at this Kerry Championship and comparing it with Mayo and just think they just have an embarrassment of scoring forwards compared with Mayo?
Can we just listen to the names there, the Fintan's listing off of who scored what and what? Like, it's sure, like it's the ultimate problem to have for a team, like, that they have these players. Like, I think Tony Brosnan kicked 210 the last year, like, and he has been, like, when I was even just following Crokes over the last couple of years, that's the name that's been sticking out and going, like, how is this guy not a mainstay? And he'd be mainstay in every team, obviously bar Kerry in Dublin, like, that we wish you could have problems like that, like, So like that's what it is. Like I suppose like this is the thing as well, isn't it, with Kerry though? Like, you know, you have the amalgamations in as well. There's guys who people you wouldn't normally see are getting a chance to step up with teams and playing at that level. Like it's what brings these guys on as well.
I spoke with Liam McHale not so long ago, and he said to me that Mayo have the leaders but they don't have the geniuses, and Kerry have the geniuses but they don't have the leaders to obviously knock Dublin off their perch. Does that sound about right?
Well, look, we haven't. We've tried, come close in the last 9 years. We just haven't. So it's great. I think Liam's actually now just a side tangent. He's managing as a Rosemount in Athlone. I think they're playing Frankie Dolan's side in Athlone in the quarterfinal next weekend as well. So that's a little championship thing on this weekend as well.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Liam's probably right in it.
Yeah. Fintan, did you notice East Kerry beating Field Rangers 114 to 3 points, and the fact that they now have 3 lads back from Rathmore who were relegated, Shane Ryan, Paul Murphy, and I'm not sure who the other one was, but the fact that their team has probably improved from winning the county final handy last year.
It's unbelievable. I mean, this, like, we're talking about embarrassment riches for Kerry forwards. I mean, this team, this was flagged last year at Kerry Convention by the secretary, basically saying there's a bit of a thing going on in Kerry in terms of population shifts and the strength of football in the county, and he was going on about kind of the traditional areas of North Kerry and the South starting to struggle a little bit, and how strong the East has been in kind of the under-21 and minor. But like, East Kerry won the county final pretty decisively last year, and then you add into that team Shane Ryan in goal and Paul Murphy coming back, and the other guy was a guy, Brendan O'Keefe, who kind of a good club player for Rathmore, and I think they've added 2 or 3 other Rathmore players to the subs bench. I mean, I was reading the report earlier. The first 3 subs they brought on were 2 guys who'd started last year on the team, both All-Ireland minor winners, and then a 2-time All-Ireland minor winner came on. So it's like these really kind of, you know, it's the conveyor belt, the kind of young players. Looked like they didn't have much trouble the other night. And actually, the other guy they got back this year was Darren Moynihan, who was out injured last year. So basically, you had 3 new Kerry seniors starting for you on Sunday. I mean, there can't be too many reigning county champions around the country, kind of had that to call them when they started out in 2020. But yeah, looks like they had no problem. I'm sorry, the other thing that actually struck me, I don't know if anyone's seen them, but the pictures that Brendan Moore and the Sportsfile did from this game, there was one of like these Kerry players, it's an aerial shot of them kind of togging out next to a graveyard, or kind of a half-time huddle next to a graveyard, like, you know. And then I think there was another about like 10 guys on top of a van trying to look in. Someone said to people go to great lengths to see David Clifford in club action these days, you know. I presume he was kind of quiet enough, you know, but I think they're the team that everyone has to beat in Kerry at the moment, and they certainly show no signs of weakening. Whether, you know, I think Spore kind of still in the intermediate championship, whether they might lose players if they win the intermediate county this year, but definitely it does look like where the kind of current power base lies at the moment in Kerry football.
Absolutely. It was actually Liam Hayes who said that thing about Mayo and Kerry, not Liam McHale, so I just best clarify that. Dr. Croke's beating Austin Stacks as well. Other than Tony Brosnan and him putting up 210, did anything really stand out for you, Fintan, in terms of how Dr. Croke's were going? I mean, they were taken all the way here to go to extra time.
Yeah, I think it was a big achievement for them to kind of win that game, because they are going through a bit of a transition. I mean, I think they've about 6 or 7 of the team that would have lost to Corfin, which is only 18 months ago now. An All-Ireland club final are gone. Obviously, Gooch is gone. Owen Brosnan is now a selector. Daithí Casey is out for the year with a fairly serious injury. I saw they tweeted a photo of him in a knee brace at the game. Did a couple of other injuries. David Shaw was one guy that was gone. So it definitely did look to me like a bit of a kind of a team revamp. Gavin White could only come on. So that's some big names we kind of listed off there. So I'd say to get out of this is a big achievement for them and a good bit of grit. I mean, they still have like Kieran O'Leary came off the bench, kicked a big point for them. Brian Looney still looks like kind of a big experienced player, and then Brosnan has that kind of bit of class up front. Fairness, Austin Stacks nearly dug it out with kind of did a combination of obviously Kieran Donaghy inside scoring a goal near the end of normal time, and they had a guy Sean Quilter who he's still in school. He would have won a Munster Colleges title with Tralee in February, and he was very good for the Kerry under 20 side that won the Munster final. This would have been pretty much in the 10 days before the GS season was shut down. He looked like a guy that was going to explode in a couple of All-Ireland underage competitions. But he came off the bench and kicked 5 points the other night. I think he's a pretty highly rated prospect. But it's just the cutthroat nature in Kerry at the moment. I mean, is it the main knockout football championship that I can think of? Sorry, I suppose Tyrone is knockout as well. But it's just the stakes of it. Like, I mean, Stacks lose after extra time, Dingle lose by a point, Kieran Zarali's lose by a point. I mean, you just think all of those would love a Mayo system where you have a group, at least you have another chance, or a Dublin system. But that's obviously the road they've gone down this year. in the county senior championship, and that's them gone, and you're straight into the quarterfinals next weekend now. So I'd say Crokes will be kind of happy to have just got there, but probably they're going to need a couple of those injuries to key players to clear up if they're going to kind of get back the title this year.
Yeah, I don't really understand why counties that aren't heavily dual would need a knockout system. It seems a bit crazy to me.
Well, I suppose the one thing what they've done they've decided that they have the club championship. So you would have had 3 games in the club championship in your group stage, and then there's so many divisions in this. So I think their argument is between the club and the county championship, players are catered for, and there's a lot of football available to them. I think that's I think that's the rationale for this year.
Okay, fair enough. I'd still like to see more of those games in championship, but that's just me. Just a point in the Down football championship over the weekend. There's plenty of results there, but Warrenpoint beat Kilcoo by a point. And I saw Thomas Niblock tweeting afterwards, was that Warrenpoint versus Kilcoo tonight? There's no doubt the officials made a mistake by ending the game at least a minute early. Presumably didn't pause watch during water break. The last 10 minutes was absolute war, food for the soul. So, I mean, you're going to have those mistakes too. Is a team going to get knocked out of the championship based on that type of thing? Well, it remains to be seen. Just one final point for you, Fintan, there. Duhallow beat UCC 420 to 612. That's a fairly big result against UCC, isn't it?
Yeah. It's fair. So Duhallow were in the final last year, so this is, I suppose, as regards kind of a quirk in the system and an anomaly. I mean, a lot of people talk about the divisional aspect in Kerry. I mean, Cork have that, and they also have the colleges. Now, a lot didn't enter this year. A lot of divisions, because of the time constraints and because of the schedule, they didn't really have player availability. So Duhallow were the only division to enter the football. I suppose the thing that kind of struck out there was the amount of, there was a good few Kerry guys who played in the Kerry Championship on Saturday, like Conor Ganey, who I mentioned. He then comes up and plays for UCC on the Sunday night, and he actually scored 2 goals. Rory O'Biogliac as well, who'd be Breen O'Biogliac's brother, he scored 1-2. So that kind of jumped out at me in terms of that. But Duhallow winning after extra time, I suppose the big thing is like Donald O'Connor, I think he's 39, was playing centre forward, still scored 3 points, kind of still chipping away. And they'll go into the kind of quarterfinals system now. And I mean, they would have always been regarded as kind of one of the kind of traditional Cork football power base, and one of the big guys. Obviously, it sounds like an absolutely mad game, 10 goals, really very, very exciting stuff. But yeah, like Duhallow, it wouldn't be surprising and it wouldn't be unexpected for them to be kind of challenging in the group stages. But just I imagine it's got to be very challenging to try and get access to players at the moment, because they would have guys playing at club level all over the place, and even some playing hurling as well, so quite a challenge for them if they're going to be coming up against the Nima Rangers or St. Finbarrs or whoever in the knockout stages. But interesting that even in this year, with everything that's going against them, they still decided to enter the team. Shows for a system that probably attracts a fair bit of debate. It still kind of seems to mean a lot to them.
Absolutely. All right, lads, well, I really appreciate that. Colm Gannon of the Mayo Advertiser and Fintan O'Toole of the 42. Thanks, lads.
No worries, Shane.